All right, everybody. So this video, we are going to be covering the AP Biology course description, so I can give you sort of a taste of what the class will look like and the exam details. So first and foremost, Friday, May 14th, 2021 at 8 a.m. is the date scheduled for the AP Biology exam. It's really contingent on where we're at with the COVID pandemic, if it's going to be in person or online, and I will keep you abreast to that situation as it evolves. So before we break down the exam, let's break down the course overall. So there's 8 units of study in this course, and I use my pointer. So there's 8 units of study, and they vary in terms of what percentage of the exam they're going to make up. So for example, the first unit, the chemistry of life, is only 8 to 11% of the exam. This first unit is going to set the foundation for you to understand the chemical basis of life, and you will need mastery of this in terms of using the information we learned from this unit to be able to apply it to the properties of living systems. I do also want to mention, you can see that within a unit, you're seeing these subtopics. So these subtopics, they may look familiar based on the unit hyperdoc. So in the unit hyperdoc, I will have each of those topics for you with an overall description of what material you should have mastered as related to that topic. So you can assess yourself and go through and see if you've hit those learning targets for a given unit. So moving on to unit 2, we'll be exploring cell structure and function. That's between 10 and 13% of the exam questions. And really, the cell is the basic unit of life. And so we're going to be exploring more deeply so that you have this foundational knowledge of cell biology and solid understanding of the origin and function of organelles within the cell. So moving on to unit 3, this will be a larger percentage of the exam, 12 to 16%, and you can see there's 7 subtopics. So in unit 3, we're really building on what we've learned in unit 2, and then you're applying what you know about structure and function in cells to be able to focus that information on how cellular energetics work and really how energy is captured and used within the cell. So then moving on to unit 4.
Are you recording? Okay, apologies for that. We are recording here at home in our life, so apologies for that. So unit 4, we are going to be focusing and still building on our understandings in unit 2 and 3. Unit 4, we're really continuing to learn and understand the role of cells, but we're focusing our energy more on how cells use energy and the information that they transmit to each other within themselves and how they communicate and replicate. So this is a really, really critical unit, 10 to 15% of the exam. So we're shifting in Unit 5 to heredity into really how biological concepts and processes are involved in ensuring the continuity of life. So we're still talking about cells in a way. We're talking about cell division of sex cells and how that drives genetic variation and diversity. We're going to be talking about Mendelian genetics and also non-Mendelian genetics as our kind of overview, our lens of looking at heredity. So at this point, by the time we're at Unit 6, we may or may not be together anymore. And these last 3 units are large percentages of the exam. As you can see, Unit 6, gene expression and regulation, is 12 to 16% of the exam. So that's really where we dive deep and focus on DNA, RNA, how DNA and RNA replicate, how transcription and translation works, and at a higher level than we learned in general biology. We're also going to be learning about the roles of mutations and biotechnology, especially, we're at a period in human history where biotechnology is at the forefront of some of the most important technological and medical discoveries with CRISPR technology. So Unit 6 will be a really critical unit. So you can see Unit 7 and the topic natural selection. It has a lot of subtopics. It has a lot of information covered in this unit. But really, it's providing foundation in the theory of evolution and one of the mechanisms that drives evolution, and that's natural selection. And so really, this is the idea that populations that are better adapted to their environment, they will be the ones that continue to survive and reproduce. And so as this goes on, the evolution of species really involves change in the genetic makeup of organisms over time. So we're applying what we're learning here in Unit 6 into Unit 7. And so you're starting to see these themes emerge in the course and really build upon each other as we progress through the course. So finally, Unit 8 is our ecology unit, and this is the culmination unit. This really takes everything you've learned in Units 1 through 7, and it directly applies it to systems biology and the available energy in a system and how the organisms therein evolve and try to respond to the environment. So we went from the complexity of the cell at the start of class to the complexity of ecosystems and how there's a huge interconnection between all of those parts. So those are the 8 units of study to keep you able to understand where you're at a given unit and where you've mastered content and where you need to go back. There will be what are called personal progress checks on AP Classroom, and they will vary in length, they will vary in types of question based on the unit, but really they're a way for me and for you to assess where you're at. And I do want to emphasize, I will not be grading these personal progress checks. I don't want the stakes to be really high. I want it to be something for you to use as a tool to continue to study and see where you need to go back. So now let's move on to the formatting of the AP Biology exam. So it has fundamentally changed starting in 2019. So you're getting a very different test. And because of COVID, you're getting an even more different test than the 2019 folks. So it's a 2-part exam, 50-50, 50% multiple choice section and 50% free response, those FRQs. So they're both worth 50% of your overall score as well. And so we're going to kind of break down how these 2 sections are going to work. So in the multiple choice section, there's 60 multiple choice questions. You're going to have an hour and a half to complete this section, and you'll have 4 options. In former exams, it wasn't 4 multiple choices, it was 6. So they've dialed it into 4. So that's a improvement for you all as the test takers. So you have about a minute for each question. My recommendation and recommendation from other AP Biology teachers is that you're trying to keep that pace at under a minute per question so that you have time to go back and make sure that if there were some questions that you skipped or you had to guess on, you're able to go back and work on those a little bit more in detail. Also, just to emphasize, there is no guessing penalty on the test, so I'm definitely encouraging you to answer every question, even if you don't know what the answer is. So then there's part 2. So that's the free response question section. It's also an hour and a half long. It's a total of 6 questions, but there's 4 short answer and there's 2 long form questions. So the short answer questions are going to be worth 4 points each on your overall exam score. And you have about 10 minutes per short answer if you want to have 20 to 25 minutes for your long free response questions. So moving into long response questions, you have 2 of those. And if you were to divide it all up evenly, you'd get 15 minutes per question. But I'm emphasizing you want more time on the long questions. So you want to build, and we're going to be working on these and practicing these throughout the course of semester 1 and 2 to get you to a point where you can feel like you can take on and tackle the short answer questions more quickly to build in more time for the long response questions. So here's a chart showing the current format of the exam versus the old format. So you can see the old exam had a lot of problems, especially with these things called grid-in questions. Students had a really hard time, especially because it was all computer-based, getting the grid questions clearly conveyed to the test readers. So they've done away with these grid-in questions. And so now you're just 60 multiple choice questions, and then you move on to your free response section, 4 short answer, 2 long questions. So when you get your textbook, you will also be getting one of the AP Biology practice test books. And so we're going to be gearing ourselves up throughout the course of the year to make sure that you feel confident about what the AP Biology exam looks like, because we're going to practice. And you also feel like you know how the questions will be posed, because you'll be seeing the formatting pretty frequently throughout the year. So I hope that answered some questions in terms of what this class looks like, what the course overall looks like, and what the exam is going to look like for you in the spring. So thanks so much, you guys.